What I realized is I didn't need to go anywhere to become what I wanted to be. It was always within me. It was just maybe the places that were bringing it out more emphasized or less based on really where I was mentally.
Every night, as I close the shades to my bedroom window, I look towards the New York skyline and say, "Good night, New York. I love you." It started out as a funny bit, and then a nightly gratitude ritual. But now, Good Night, New York. I Love You is a new podcast about places we love. So, this podcast isn't really about New York, it's about any place we love and why we love it. Because just like finding a soulmate, our relationship with places can feel just as powerful. In each new episode, my guest and I will explore what drives that connection with places, but we'll also explore the relationship between love, places, and connection with community. This is Good Night, New York. I love you. Hello, and welcome to Good Night, New York. I love you. I'm your host, Jane Marie. Today's guest is Krupa Tailor. Krupa is the founder of Prayer, a platform inspiring people and organizations to build trust through continuous cycles of learning and doing. She tells us about her love of Lisbon, which she discovered after years in New York. Krupa began exploring slower, more intentional rhythms of work and life while in Lisbon, where she found that movement, mindfulness, and connection are as essential as performance and productivity. Our conversation explores the ideas of change, experimentation, and finding home within yourself, no matter what place you might be in. Let's dive right in. Hi, Krupa.
Hey, Jane, how are you?
Good. Welcome to Good Night, New York. I love you. I'm so excited to have you as a guest.
I am so pumped to be here and love to see you bringing us into the world.
Thank you so much. Let's tell everyone how we connected.
What a lovely story. We met at a gallery opening in Mexico City. We were both just at this opening. We had heard about it. I think you were visiting. I had been in Mexico City for a few weeks. And I think I liked your shirt. And I was like, hey, I really like your shirt. Or there was some connection between us liking something on the other person. And we struck a conversation to learn we had both been living at some point in New York City.
Yeah, you know what's so funny is I went to the Olivia Foundation because I had been in a shop earlier that day and the shopkeeper had said, "Oh, there's some really great galleries. You should check this one out." And I just happened upon it when the opening was happening. I was talking to another group and told them I'm from New York. And they said, "Do you know these people in the corner?" And that's why I even came over to talk to you because I found out that you were from New York and ended up that we used to live down the street from each other before you
Like,
moved. We were
what a crazy
neighbors.
world.
That's the invisible string theory at work.
I know, I know. And coming to life, like how often do you actually meet the people that live down your street in another country? Like never happens.
Very serendipitous. So, Krupa, tell me about a place you love.
I love Lisbon. But before I go into it, let me tell you how that came to be. I had decided to leave New York after about 15 years of being in and out of New York. It was the first time I didn't have a corporate job that was tying me into going into the office. I quit. And so I wasn't necessarily tied down to New York anymore. And I was like, I've never lived abroad. It was such a dream of mine. I never did it in college. I didn't get the chance to do it when I was in corporate America. And I was like, maybe this is my opportunity to live in different places. I'm going to spend the first part of this sabbatical, if you will, even though I was still working self employed and creating my own business. I'm going to spend those first 6 weeks of this leg in Mexico City. And so I think that we saw each other right at the end as I was about to go on to my next location, which was Zambia. My grandmother lives there. My mom was born there. And the adventure kicked off in Mexico City. And it was such a beautiful way for it to kick off.
I love hearing you talk about being in New York and having a corporate job. And even if people listening don't have a corporate job, they can probably relate to this idea of having a job that ties them physically to a place. Can you tell everyone what encouraged you to quit that job and start doing something else? What was that journey like?
It's always a compounding of a lot of different things. Of course, people say there was this one moment, and I will tell you there was one moment, but it was probably the compounding of a lot of different things happening. I had a corporate job. I had left to go to a startup. It was an amazing opportunity, but it wasn't the right fit. And it was the first time in my life where I was like, I'm going to quit and I have no plan. I have no job waiting for me. I don't know what this looks like. I need a break. I'm super burnt out. We'll see what happens. I was fortunate for the work I was doing where I decided to take away the role, which was the chief operating officer, and still do the work contractually, which then allowed me this freedom. We talk a lot in society now about how sometimes titles are just things you reach for until you get them and you're like, is this what I really wanted? And it was one of those moments for me in that startup specifically. Probably in November 2023 is when I made the decision to leave New York. I had quit my job about 3 months prior. This one moment, I go to a really amazing performance of a friend, live singing and violin. You're encouraged to dance. There was a cacao ceremony. I remember at the end of the night, I'm meeting new people, and someone comes up to me and they're like, you're definitely from New York. 15-year-old Krupa could not have waited to hear that moment of someone being like, you're so New York, because it was so much of what I had wanted. And it was in that moment, this man says it to me, and I was like, ooh, but is that what I want to be anymore? And that was really the impetus of, okay, you don't have the job. You don't have to stay here. What do you want to do? Scary and exciting all at the same time.
This dance party event you're describing, this was in New York or in Mexico City?
It was in New York.
Tell me
Yeah.
more about being in New York, but somebody saying, oh, you look like you're from New York.
I stuck out like a sore thumb. I was really put together. I was contained to a certain extent. When you're thinking about a fluid event, if you're staying in your space, how fluid are you really moving through the space? I think maybe I even went in a suit for all I know. Like the way I dressed, my demeanor, I wasn't as free as everyone else there. And so they were able to just be like, yeah, you must be from New York.
The rest of the people at this event, where were they from? Were they not from New York either?
They were from New York, but they were more plugged into this community, or they had migrated to New York after spending time in other places. Not such a corporate New York culture.
Like there's multiple ways of being in New York, but this stereotype that this man is commenting on in you, tell me if I'm right, is a little buttoned up. Your
Mhm.
clothes look more business-like.
Mhm.
In the physical space, you're not taking up a lot of space. I think it's especially fascinating that somebody in New York at an event in New York said, oh, you look so New York, but he was differentiating you from the community that you were in at this event space. We were talking about you being in this event and
Mhm.
having this moment of realizing I am looking and playing the part of a New Yorker, but I'm not sure that that's who I want to be anymore. What happened next?
An identity crisis. I didn't realize how much that comment impacted me until I started doing New York things. And I was like, I don't want to be doing these things. I was your go to girl. Like, what's the scene? What's going on? What should we be doing? What should we be seeing? And I was in that and I loved it and I thrived off of that. But after that comment, I was like, I want to explore in different ways. The innate values of who I am were still there. I think they were just showing up in a different way in New York. I think that connection to places is really interesting. It brings out the best and worst in you. But it was one of those moments where I think it was bringing a little bit of the worst out of me versus the best. So it was like, am I just figuring out the best of places because it's who I was and what it like establishes me here, or is it because I truly enjoy it? And I couldn't discern between those two anymore, which it made it harder with friends for a bit too, because obviously I didn't want to do the same things. I was trying to explore different things. That's hard when you've created something that's so beautiful and it's like, ooh, is this the beauty that I want after choosing it for so long?
It's a really beautiful point that you make about your interests changing and how it affects your whole worldview and way of being and the people that you interact with, because you built a whole community based on who you were previously, a previous iteration of yourself. And when you change, unless those people change in the same way as you have to, not always, but sometimes you have to shed a community of friends and find the community that better fits the next stage of your life.
Yeah, and I'm happy we're actually pausing here because it's true that could happen. But I also think that sometimes your friends are just in different seasons than you. And there is such a beauty in accepting that as well. Yes, I can create friendships with new people as this, let's say, new person that I've become. But if I am not honoring, and I've really been learning this a lot, if I'm not honoring who I was that got me here and the friends that also brought that, I think I'm at a disadvantage. And that's what I'm learning. I love this piece of integration. I have new friends. Are they all over the world? Is it amazing? Yeah. But the friends that saw me through those best and worst moments that I was talking about, that's ride or die. You'll find that in any place, even if you're acting out or you're feeling different. You'll come back. You'll come back to a sense of what home is.
I love that because my mom used to sing the Girl Scouts song to me when I was growing up, the one that goes, "Make new friends, but keep the old. One is silver and the other gold." Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't, but I love this. And I feel like I'm going to have to look it up. Like I wasn't a Girl Scout, so I have no idea, but I love
I
this. It's
wasn't
exactly
either, but
that.
she used to sing this song to me whenever I would be going through a big friendship change. I have come up against this idea you're talking about of feeling like you are changing a lot and that these friends that you had in community, they're not going through the same season as you, and that can be a really difficult thing to manage. It's great to make new friends and to find a new community that can support you through the new thing. And it's also important to see which friends you're talking about, these ride or die friends, and to find a way to still be connected with them and to still build on that friendship. For me, those friends are the friends that I grew up with. I went to a K-12 school and I'm very close to those girls that I grew up with. Even though a lot of us are in very different seasons, a huge part of it for me is they know me in and out. Nobody knows me like these friends. They know who I was. They know who I've become. They've seen the chapters in between, and they still love me. Some of the friendships I feel like, wow, we're so different now. However, I say these people are always going to be in my life because they're like family to me. I've
Yeah.
known them forever. There's nothing
Yeah.
like that, I think.
I agree. I agree. And I've been really fortunate to have that happen to me a few times. I have friends from childhood. I have friends from a high school camp. I have
Mhm.
friends from business school that have really seen my growth and seen just like my evolution and been with me. So I do have to say I'm really fortunate in that sense of having these groups of people that have really been ride or die.
One of the reasons I wanted to linger on this topic is
Mm,
because what I really think a goal of this podcast is exploring community and what helps us form community, keep community, sustain community, and find that connection and belonging with other people. There's a lot of wisdom to what you said about making new friends, but keeping the old friends too, and seeing the value in both. I think in this age we're living in, we see on the internet all the time the advice of, oh, if that friend isn't meeting you where you need to be, if they're not being a good friend to you, cut them out and just move on. I see a lot of advice too of just ghost them and move on. I don't think we can actually have the kind of community and connection we're looking for if that's the way we approach our friendships. If we approach it like, oh, I'm in a new place, so see ya.
without a doubt. And we're talking about this connection with others, but it really starts at the connection with yourself, which is why I actually did say I need to honor my past selves because they are who got me here. And guess what? Those past selves made these very strong relationships. I am going to bring those people on and honor them. I'm going to honor them the same way I hope to honor myself. But that was a lesson. That was a lesson I learned in these 2 years. I don't think at the beginning I was doing that. I really do think I was more like, okay, I'm going to be a new person, which means it's a totally new thing. And piece by piece, I was like, wait, this isn't how I want to be moving through life. This isn't how I want to show up. So again, I'm actually fortunate that the people that I might have been a little bit more like, okay, I'm done, have allowed for that evolution and that realization to come up.
It's really amazing when you find people in your community who can hold space for your past self and make room for your new self. The
It's
new evolution of you, the new iteration of you, the new chapter of you.
Yeah, without a doubt. And we were touching on it before too. Even though we keep on saying we're new selves, past selves, the values are actually the same, right? When I was saying I wanted exploration, well, it's still curiosity. It's still that same hunger. It's just maybe needing to manifest in a different way. Or the priority of that curiosity is going to be lower than the priority of a different value that I decide to put up. The more we can see each other as, hey, at the end of the day, we have foundational values are the same. Maybe we prioritize them different. That also helps build this community and allows for different seasons and allows for discourse and discussion because at the foundation of it, see that the intention is good.
I love that. Thanks for letting me go on a tangent there. I want to make sure that we wrap up this journey that you were on.
Yeah, let's get to how we get to the place that I love the most. After Mexico City, I mentioned I was going to go to Zambia. Lusaka is exactly where my grandmother and my uncle and his family, my cousins, a few of them live. And my aunt, who I can't forget to mention, she's amazing. That was the pause that I really needed. I was very family oriented there. Was a different kind of experience. It was a different community buildup. It was the family. It was really learning about where I came from. I really went on this journey of, okay, yes, I want to study abroad, but I also want to learn a lot more about myself because I'm saying I want to become this new thing. I don't know what that exactly is. I'm leaving something behind. And so, what better way to really ground all of that than by meeting someone who's living and has been living? She's actually 96 years old, who can help tell me a little bit more about my history. When I was in Zambia, I had already made plans that I would spend the summer in Ibiza. Something had called me there. It made me feel that's where I wanted to go. But when I was in Zambia, I was like, I don't want to go there. It's not the time for me to go there. And I happened to be talking to a friend, actually the same friend that took me to the concert in New York. Now I'm making all these connections. She was in Lisbon. She had really found that become her happy place. And she's like, come here. We'll figure out an apartment, come here for the summer and decide from there if you want to go to Ibiza, if you want to do other things, you're at least back on the European continent. And I was like, oh, okay, let's do that. My next location of this sabbatical was going to be Lisbon.
Tell me why you ended up loving Lisbon so much.
Lisbon, Portugal, is one of those places that really lets you be you. I ended up in Portugal, in Lisbon, like I mentioned during the sabbatical. I had gone 2 years prior, though, and it didn't have that same pull at the time. It was a solo trip I was making in between a really fun big trip that I was taking with my friends to Greece. The second time, where really I fell in love, I was lucky enough, like I mentioned, the friend who invited me to come to Lisbon. I think knowing her and her knowing me, it did make it easier to be somewhere. I didn't know anyone when I was in Mexico City. It was really coming in pretty fresh. With Lisbon, I got there. I felt like I knew someone. I felt like I had been given a little bit of rules of the road, like here's where your grocery store is. I felt like I could slip right in versus, oh, I have to figure all these things out. And then once I figure them out, it's like, oh, do I like it here? What was beautiful is I didn't really have much to figure out. It's also a bit of a smaller city. All I had to decide was, do I like it here? Am I enjoying it here? What is this bringing out in me? And I loved it. It brought out every emotion possible. And I think it's where I learned range. I would say I used to be someone that was very positively toxic because I thought I have to be in high vibration. I have to be positive. That's who I am. And it's a beautiful compliment a lot of people give me. They'll be like, you have so much positive energy. But I don't think I allowed myself to explore the shadow sides as much. And what I will say is that's what Lisbon gave me. It gave me the ability to have the first insight into the shadow in a conscious way and not feel shameful for it. And that's for a number of reasons, right? They have this thriving spiritual community, which actually we talked about in Mexico City. But you had mentioned this really great astrologer, Chris Corsini. I literally was at his opening of Wheelhouse. I got to do really cool ceremonies there. So there were all these different connection points that I didn't even realize were showing up in Lisbon in quite a short period of time that then just made me fall in love.
You mentioned the spiritual community helping you get in touch with your shadow sides. Is there anything else this city, this place that you love, brought out in you?
It brought out joy, experimentation. I ended up leaving Lisbon, just for the listeners to know. I ended up leaving Lisbon last summer and I ended up going back again this summer. Some of my answers are an amalgamation of both these summers that I've had there. But what I would say the other thing that it's shown me is that discomfort is a good thing. The first time I was there, I had a few uncomfortable moments, but maybe I shied away from them more. And I would say the second time I went, I really let myself be uncomfortable and know that discomfort was something that was helping me.
Do you have any examples you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, one of the best things that came out of this summer, I joined this studio called Movement Studio. It's down the street from Wheelhouse, the spiritual center we just talked about. All of these things are popping up in this little area called Lapa or Lower Lapa. The Movement Studio had this class that is called Mixed Movement. I had no idea what it was. I had met the owner and he was like, I think if you're curious, and she said a few different things like values again that I was like, oh my God, those are so me. I should try this class. You're going to a workout class, so you're assuming, okay, am I going to be doing burpees? Those are the things that you go into it worried about. This class is nothing like that. It definitely challenges your strength, but in a very different way. So I'll give you an example. One of the first things that I did in the class was we were throwing tennis balls. And the way we had to throw them was think about how you throw a tennis ball. Any ball, you're going to throw it over and you're going to catch it under. The activity that we were asked to do was no, you need to throw under and catch over, and you're going to be doing it with a partner. So you can imagine you're like, I don't know if I'm even going to get this. Okay, I'm going to be really bad at this. And so this mental chatter starts, but you're working through finding some piece of mastery by continuing to do it with your body. That's just one example. They had so many amazing activities that were strung together very intentionally to help you realize what you were saying to yourself through this discomfort, but also helping you rewire that discomfort isn't a bad thing, but in a very fun way.
I love this idea that discomfort is a good thing. And we can sit in this discomfort. Your story reminds me about this notion of being a beginner. And when we're kids, we are beginners all the time. We take on new things and we learn new things all the time. But the older we get, the less common being a beginner is. For us as adults to intentionally make time and to find time for activities that challenge us in that way, and maybe that we know we're probably not going to be good at this right away and it takes some practice, and that's okay. I love that idea. I'm really interested in that class and how they structured it and how can we incorporate that more into our day-to-day lives.
Yeah, follow Cameron James. He has a YouTube channel called Movement Decoded. He was just awesome. What I loved about Cameron is I would have these moments of debriefs with him sometimes. And the other thing he really solidified in my mind, and it has to do with what you're saying, like beginner, and what I'm noticing even as a pattern. He's an athlete, a renowned athlete. I think he was a pole vaulter for Jamaica in the Olympics. Awesome stuff. And maybe a lot of athletes would have heard this, but I guess I'm an athlete in a different way. I never had heard about this skill creation. What he had said was you go through these 4 stages. You're unconsciously bad, which means you don't even know what it is, and you're probably bad at it. And then you become consciously bad. So showing up to this class, I am consciously bad. But at some point, you do move from all this practice into consciously good. And then from consciously good, you move back into unconsciously good, but it's where you actually are getting your flow. Hearing him even say that, I was like, oh, this makes a ton of sense. So many of us are likely unconsciously bad. We try, and so we become consciously bad, and we don't want to get to consciously good because it takes so much to get there. The class that gave you that opportunity to show up, you're going to get better. It's going to get easier. And then we're going to throw something else at you. And I loved that. I loved that idea of challenges in different, smaller ways almost, but holistic ways.
We can take this idea of skill creation and apply it to anything, right? Because anything that we want to try, most times we're going to be consciously bad as soon as we try it and realize, oh no, I'm actually not good at this thing. Over the summer, I read Cher's memoir, part one.
Okay.
It's really fascinating. I've known about Cher vaguely throughout my life, but nothing super in depth. And it was on a whim that I got the memoir and I was reading it while I was in Italy. I'm reading about her journey of becoming who she is today. The first time her and Sonny became famous, Sonny mismanaged their money and they ended up owing all these taxes to the government, and they were basically back at ground zero in terms of money and where they were with popularity. So they go on the road again and they're grinding and they're hustling every single day. And she talks about this night, and she very clearly remembers this night where they're in this bar, there's not many people there, and they're not paying attention to anything that they're singing. And she's talking about how humiliating it is. She's like, this is going horribly. And she turns around to the band and starts riffing with the band. And she's just making jokes. Then the crowd starts laughing. And so she starts to lean into this idea of, oh, we can do some comedy too when we're up here on stage. Then she goes on to talk about for the whole tour, they're practicing material every single night. And they're not automatically good at it, but they're getting better. From that time was when they were signed by television execs and got their TV show and became Sonny and Cher. And then we know Cher ended up doing a show by herself. And all that to say, I had this realization over the summer that most people don't reach their dreams because they give up too soon. They give up when they're in this consciously bad stage and they don't put in the work to become consciously good or unconsciously good and really get into their flow. When you look at the people who have sustained success, it's because they've really put in the time. I think it's actually pretty uncommon for people to become successful on a whim and stay successful.
Without a doubt, I can't agree with you more. And what I would say is part of this conscious bad to conscious good is you start falling in love with the practice. You start falling in love with what you're doing because there's no more measures of success in the same way, because there can't be. The measure of success is not reached until you're good. So you have to be okay with there being no real measure of success in the bad stage, apart from your own inherent belief that you're getting better, which is why people talk about becoming delusional. You have to have this belief, this plan, and this action. If you're not taking the action, you're not seeing if you can do it. There's so many people on the sidelines, right? But if you take the action and you don't have the belief, you're going to give up. And let's say you don't have the plan and all of that, then you don't have a direction you're going in. That's the other thing I've really been taking. When we talk about going to places, Lisbon in particular, what it's opening up, having this summer where I was learning so much about discomfort, it helped me learn so much about how we behave as humans, how we behave as people. And it's actually enlightened my work. What's so interesting is Lisbon is a place where I always go to rejuvenate. I try not to think about work. I was working this year when I was there, but it's not necessarily a place that is conducive for me working because there's a beach, there's the cafes, there's a spiritual class, go to this workout class. It's really built for that digital nomad. What I would say is doing the things and living there has given me so much as I'm coming back to the States of thinking about what I'm building, right? I don't think we talked about what I'm building at this point, but I'm moving into organizational development. We talk about this micro and macro, you as the self, and then how that relates to others. that realization of self with discomfort is now something I really want to bring into organizations. What is happening when your employee is uncomfortable? Are they stopping? Are you helping encourage that? What is happening in that pivotal moment that is happening likely every single day more than we can count, but we just ignore it? It's been exciting because like I didn't actually foresee that that would be something that happened.
That's so amazing. And I'm finding it's part of building a business and building a brand is welcoming in all of these different iterations. I think this is a really great segue to talk about your approach to experimentation. It's the number one thing that I took away from the times we had when you were coaching me. You really taught me in a meaningful way how to start experimenting with my life and what I want to do with my career and how I want to make money. Can you tell the listeners about your approach to experimentation?
Yeah, of course. Thanks. I appreciate all those kind words too. So, before I go into experimentation, I want to take a step back of
Okay.
why I think experimentation is such a key aspect of wanting to change. If we look at change, whether it is welcomed or not, there will always be resistance because we like the status quo. We are animals. We want to survive. We are wired for survival. Change is a disruption. Change is viewed as something that is going against our survival, even if it isn't. When we are approaching change, everything in our body and our mind usually is looking at past data to say, these are all the reasons you shouldn't change. So, what is the only way that you're going to start getting your mind and body into a place of, oh, we can change? New data. How do you get new data? You have to experiment, you have to try new things. Experimentation really came from this idea of we are inherently going to be resistant to change. What are the ways that we can move towards the change that we really wish to see? It's these small, tiny experiments. I'm hearing so much in the educational world coming up about this too. One of the books that I've been seeing in academia is called Tiny Experiments. It's by this author, Anne-Laure Lecomte. I might be getting her name wrong in the way I'm pronouncing it, but she's doing a great job in making sure that we frame it as tiny experiments. Because again, we're collecting data on a new place of where we want to go. And the only way to do that is by taking small steps. You could make an extreme change, but what I will say is that extreme change is likely not going to be sustainable unless you somehow start creating daily practices, again, experiments to make that sustainable. And it's really actually beautiful because this all is starting to connect, right? Because I was in New York. I didn't want to be a New Yorker anymore. I needed to do an experiment. It brought me to Mexico City, which then brought me to Zambia, which then brought me to Lisbon. These might seem like big experiments. Of course, maybe the actual going to these places were big, but within each of them included these tiny experiments of how am I going to show up here? So if I'm saying I'm becoming this person, what am I going to do here that's going to make that come to life? What I will leave you with, I'm sure we have more of this conversation to go, but just making this connection right now is what I realized is I didn't need to go anywhere to become what I wanted to be. It was always within me. It was just maybe the places that were bringing it out more emphasized or less based on really where I was mentally.
That is so beautiful and beautifully said. I love this very tangible lesson. A lot of times we think we have to make a huge change in our life in order to become the next iteration of ourselves. But the reality is, it's lots of small changes over time. And what you just said of I don't need to go anywhere to become who I wanted to be, I think that's such a beautiful notion because there's many people who traveling or experimenting with moving or visiting a new place isn't possible for them for a number of reasons. Maybe it's financial, maybe it's their health, maybe it's their families. To have this realization that we actually can do these things no matter where we are is a really important lesson for us to take from this conversation.
Yes. I think if I take it back to one place where I learned that, During the pandemic, I had all this ideas of living and studying abroad. I was at American Express at the time. I had expressed my interest in wanting to be at least maybe in England or somewhere. Pandemic happened, it was 2021, and they're like, we can't offer you something in the UK, but you can go to Florida. It wasn't going to be Miami. It wasn't going to be a major city. I was going to run a call center, but it was going to be a completely different experience. I remember that they felt they were going to open the office based on all the protocols that we were hearing. So I could have lived really close to the customer service office, or I could have lived what was going to end up being an hour commute in Fort Lauderdale because we wouldn't be going in every single day. I decided I'd go to Fort Lauderdale. Again, not knowing anyone. I knew more people in Miami, not that it was super far away. And I remember just thinking to myself, this isn't London, obviously. It's not the place I would go to so that I could just fly anywhere from here and go explore something. But it's that curiosity, it's that exploration. And so I made little things. I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the museum. There are museum Fridays. That's how I meet people. You have to figure out how you can be who you want to be where you are, because no matter where you go, there you are. It doesn't change. There probably was a piece of me that was running until I realized, what am I running from? Like, this is great. This is how I can create the life that I want. It's by doing the things I want.
That is such a beautiful statement that, you don't have to run to find yourself. I want to go back to this part that you said about creating the life you want no matter where you are. I think we romanticize this idea that we have to, again, going back to this idea of making a big change. We have to make a big change, or we have to go on a big trip, or we have to have our Eat, Pray, Love year, or whatever it is, in order to become the next iteration of ourselves, or in order to find the community that we've been wanting, or whatever it is. What you're talking about of living the life we want wherever you are is crucial and connects to what we were talking about with community earlier. If we want to have a community, if we want friends, if we want a certain type of support, if we want to do certain kind of activities and have people alongside us doing those, we want to feel that belonging and connection, we have to make the steps to find that.
Exactly. I actually want to also connect that to something. We didn't talk about where I am now, which is at my parents' in a town close to Scranton, Pennsylvania, but I'm heading to New York quite a bit. What's really interesting about this whole journey now that I'm ending back in New York is I did find community everywhere I went. Part of it was making sure that I sought out the things that I wanted to, that I really deeply connected with people, even though I was potentially going to be leaving and not staying there long term. There's transient cultures, and that's hard too. But what I would say is I knew that everything I had the privilege of learning as I went away was something I wanted to bring back to my core community.
You've mentioned a lot of the things that you've learned, but what are some of those lessons you'd like to bring back to your core community?
There's so many different things. Everything's not urgent. We can talk to each other. We can see each other in the street and smile. It's a New York thing that we don't really say hi to each other. You find that in other parts of America. I remember when I went to Chicago for the first time, someone said hi to me and I was like, do I know them? The other thing I had said before was we have values and then different prioritizations of those values. That was something I learned from a friend who wrote a book in Portugal. There was a lot of healthy discourse there too. It's an interesting time in the world. And let's talk about an interesting time in America. So many people continue to say, and I was one of them, I'm going to leave. This isn't where I want to be. I was 100% one of those people. And you go into these other countries, let's say Portugal, Lisbon, an expat, quote unquote. What you start realizing is you're part of the problem now that you've gone away. You're creating the dissonance between the Portuguese and the Portuguese speaking and the English speaking and the prices and all of that kind of stuff. When I talk about not only seeing the shadow sides of myself and being able to accept and figure out what that looks like, I started seeing the shadows of where I was going. And that's when I realized I have a choice. Do I want to solve the problem that is happening here in this country of Portugal, where there are these expats and there are local Portuguese people, and the Portuguese government has been giving some sort of tax relief to those people that haven't always lived there and all these other things that I'm sure I don't even know of? Or do I want to go back to New York, a place that I know, a place that brings out the best and worst in me, but a place where I know I can bring the things that I've learned from all of these places back to a community that I want to build stronger here. That's also been the really interesting thing that's happened over the last 2 years of this journey. I do love Lisbon. We talk about what is this place that I love, but I know what Lisbon is in my life now. I think when I went back the second time, I was looking maybe, is this going to be where I live because it's a savior? But no, that doesn't exist anywhere. And it's going to be whatever you do to make it whatever it is. It's uncomfortable to go back to places you might have been because maybe you broke a relationship or a friendship, but lean into that discomfort, figure out the challenge that you want to solve. All of these things relate to each other, right? Having these experiments, allowing for the change, going places, coming back, building community, they all continue to build on each other.
That's really beautiful. You've touched a little bit on it. Tell us about your current relationship with Lisbon.
I love it. I will go back, and maybe I don't go back for my entire summer. Maybe it's shorter trips more frequently because I do have a good group of people that I really love that live there. And it's always home. Home is in my heart now. So it's okay if that happens in Lisbon and that's where things flourish. It's okay if that happens in New York. But just based on what's happening in the outside world now, I have created that home in my heart. And now I know what that means for me as New York right now. But Lisbon is going to have the biggest piece of my heart, and it always will. There's a beautiful detachment to that, not a very yearning attachment, which I've also been learning a lot more about.
I love that. One of the themes of this podcast is thinking about soulmate connections with places. When we have that kind of relationship with someone, it indicates this reciprocity. And you've mentioned a lot about what you got from your relationship with Lisbon. And I'm curious how you view the reciprocity piece.
I would say one of the things that I was giving back was having the conversations that I'm having with you, going to a restaurant in Lisbon, so many of them opened by expats. The Movement Studio, which I love, opened by expats. Not that I directly had this conversation with every single person, but there was an article that actually came out in The Guardian by someone who owned a bookshop in Lisbon called Salted Books. She had moved from the UK to Lisbon and was now moving back to the UK based on what she felt was her impact on being an expat in Lisbon. And what I would say is the piece that I think I'm giving back is an allowance of looking at our impact in any place we go to without guilt or shame, but with accountability. I'm going to go back there. I'd love to go back there. One day, if I could live there, I would love that. But I do think I'll do that with as much intentionality of not just the land, but of the people. And that's hard to do. And I will not get it perfect. And I probably will mess up and I will probably do the wrong things. But I think what I feel I might have given back is the openness to have those discussions so that we can be better, not just so that we can feel like, oh, I didn't leave because I didn't want to be the destroyer, the expat. I left because I want to bring back certain things to this community. The way I learned about the feelings of the Portuguese, about the expat community, it wasn't through this, we want you out, we don't have room for conversation. It was very much in this approach of, the government made these decisions on behalf of the people. And I think the people are now saying, do we agree with these decisions and what do we want to do? And someone explaining that to you as someone who's coming into the country, potentially as someone that's taking away from them, quote unquote, they never saw it that way. I think that's such a beautiful lesson to learn here. We live in so much, oh, if they do this, then they're taking this. And that's not true. We need to have the conversation of what it is.
That's really beautiful. It reminds me of this past month. I was going to Wyoming for work and I invited my parents. I said, do y'all want to meet me? I'm going to fly in and out of Jackson Hole. We could do the weekend and go to the Tetons and go to Yellowstone. So we did this weekend trip. I'm trying to alchemize everything that I'm learning having been in Wyoming because I was like, oh my God, I haven't been in a place in so long that I thought I could live here. But then you're thinking about whose land really is it? Because even the people who are like, oh, my family's been here for generations. Like at one point, their family was not, unless they're Native American.
Without a doubt.
What is the role of tourism and how do you do it in an ethical way? Because I was a tourist in Jackson Hole. Have you been to Jackson Hole?
Never
What's
been yet.
wild is the airport's in the middle of the park. Technically, the outer bounds of the park include the airport. And so it's completely changed the city and this town of Jackson and this idea of gentrification. It's the same themes.
All the same themes. Here's the thing where we are as a collective. If I think about Lisbon, there's old and new. Right next to an old building is a new building. It's taking it all the way back to what we said from the beginning. I need to honor my past selves to continue to move forward. And the moving forward is tiny experiments, not big proclamations. When I say micro and macro, that is exactly what I'm talking about. And I don't know the answer. I'm just saying I think this is part of the value that we should be thinking about everywhere. How do we honor the past because it got us to where we are? Right? Whether it's the Portuguese people that live there, whether that's the gentrified neighborhoods, we got here even if we want to go there. But the problem that I keep on seeing is everyone is leaping. And what I talked about in the beginning, what happens with change? You are resistant. So it all goes together, right? What is it feeling uncomfortable? When do you lean in? When do you take the tiny experiment? All of this connects.
Yeah. One final question. You've told us so much about what you love about Lisbon. I'd love to know what your ideal day in Lisbon looks like. Can you describe that for us?
Yes. I would start off with the mixed movement at Movement Studio. I would then go to journal at Tact, this coffee place that saw me every single day, who just became my second home. From there, you're really close to the beach. It's about 15 minutes to these amazing beaches. I would likely head there because it gets quite hot. The food is really good there too. So now I'm thinking, would I eat in the city, go into the beach area, come back? And then there's so many good restaurants and wine spots and ceremonial places. So I feel like I'd want to go, maybe go to Wheelhouse for some sort of thing, end the day at the square with the Praça. Like that's a really cute place. And then go home.
Amazing. Well,
Yeah.
thank you, Krupa, so much for telling us about Lisbon and for also explaining to us all of the things that you've learned about what home really is to you and encouraging us to take these tiny experiments to really change over time and come back home to who we really are and who we've always been all along.
Yes, thank you. Thanks for taking the time to hear some of what I had to say.
Wow, I loved hearing from Krupa. What an interesting conversation, and it brought up so many themes for me that I have thought about in my life of moving and trying new places and traveling and experimenting. I hope it resonated with you too. If you want to hear more from Krupa, you can follow her business at Prayer to Believe on Instagram. I'll also list it in the show notes. Remember that every episode I will have a new guest where we will explore places that they love and all of the themes underlying that love. Follow for more, and I'll see you next time on Good Night, New York. I love you.